Hey, welcome to Third Tuesday Conversations. I'm Danica Olson, and we're glad to have you together today. We're having a conversation about Lutheran Outdoor Ministry. We have Layne Nelson and Mara Stilson with us chatting this afternoon. So welcome, you two. We're glad to have you. Are you there?
Well, thank you very much. Oh. It's an honor to be with you, Danica.
Perfect. Great. Just as an aside for people who might be joining us for the first time, we'll ask for some questions later in our broadcast. And so if you want to submit your questions to Layne or Mara, you can do so in the question box on the right-hand side of your screen. So glad to have you. Before we jump into camping stuff, let me go back one screen. Tell us a little bit about you, about your position with Lutheran Outdoor Ministry in South Dakota, and maybe what you're up to when you're not hanging out at camp.
You bet. Well, again, my name is Layne Nelson, and I'm the Executive Director for Lutherans Outdoors in South Dakota. And Lutherans Outdoors is a unique organization in that we were created, if you will, by the congregations of this synod. They took some camps back in 1968 that were existing and serving people very faithfully, and to strengthen them, they joined them together under the parent organization of Lutherans Outdoors. And so in my role, I serve the camps of Nisadak, Klein Ranch, Outlaw Ranch, and Joy Ranch. But when I'm not doing outdoor ministry things, I'm also a husband. I have a wonderful wife, Jennifer, and three pretty interesting kids. My son Jonah is a sophomore, my daughter Madeline is a 7th grader, and I have a daughter Olivia who is a 3rd grader. So 3 kids in 3 different schools on 3 different calendars and schedules. So when I'm not running around doing work stuff around the state, I'm running around the city of Sioux Falls chasing after my kids. But I love it. It's a good time of life.
Cool. Very good.
And I'm Mara Stilson, and I'm the Communications Director for Lutherans Outdoors. So I work with all of the camps that Layne mentioned previously. I do a lot of time spent with the congregations around the state, really with church relations and connecting with youth leaders and pastors around the state. I previously worked in youth ministry, so the Youth Ministry Network is very familiar to me. I also love to go out to the extravaganza each year, so I will probably see many of you at the Youth Ministry extravaganza in January. So those are a few of the things that I do with Lutherans Outdoors. And when I'm not at camp, my husband and I love to make music with one another. We lead music for one of the Mission Start congregations in our synod, and so we do that. And we are expecting our first child in April, so that's new and exciting news for us.
Congratulations.
Some of that fun stuff coming down the way. And I also really love to run. That's my biggest love.
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing a little bit about yourselves. It's fun to be able to have a chat over coffee with people you know a bit better. So let's jump in and have you tell us about...
drinking some wonderful, strong coffee here.
Oh, good, good. We're glad to hear it. Wondering if you can tell us what kind of camping experiences you offer at Lutherans Outdoors in South Dakota, and what you think about camp. What is the most important piece about a life of faith, or sort of 2 questions in one, but what about the camping experience that you offer? I'm not finding my words.
Well, South Dakota is a wonderful place to be in ministry, and as far as camps go, Lutherans Outdoors is somewhat unique in that we have one organization, as I mentioned before, but it has 4 camps, and each of them is able to offer unique programming from one another, and each is located in unique geography. For example, Nisadak, which is a wonderful waterfront camp, is located in the northeast part of our state and has a long, long history of serving people year-round, but they're maybe most known for working with middle school and elementary kids, and they do some fabulous confirmation camp ministry and things along those lines. And the far opposite corner of the state, out in the Black Hills by Custer, is Outlaw Ranch, which is known across the country as a premier family camp. They also do a lot for youth adventures and service opportunities. We do a fair amount of work on the Pine Ridge Reservation, as well as taking people on trips and just making use of the beautiful Black Hills. In the northwest part of the state, we have Klein Ranch, and there's really no place in the country like Klein Ranch. It's just wide open prairie with just a big sky, and it's quite remote, and that's a bit of an understatement. But the beauty of that is that it kind of creates this atmosphere where people come together real quickly, and they start to discover who they are and who God's calling them to be, because there's just not those other distractions around them. And while they're doing work with the animals and the horses, they learn about themselves. It's kind of crazy how that works. And then almost the opposite of that, we have our newest camp, Joy Ranch, located by Watertown, South Dakota. And that's unique in several ways. One, it combines a waterfront camp and an equestrian program, which you don't often find together in the same place. But more than that, it's our first real high comfort facility. It's also built from the ground up to be barrier-free so that it can serve people of all ages and all abilities. And we're finding a real growing area there, especially with grandparents and family reunions, and people who might not otherwise come to camp are feeling welcomed. But beyond that, it's also helping us reach out and learn what it means to serve people in the secular world who might not come to us through the traditional means of a congregation.
Very cool.
As I've been describing that, what's also unique, a part of that is that the South Dakota Synod has the same boundaries as the state, and so we are able to offer all of this as kind of the camping ministry of the South Dakota Synod, which means that the owners are the congregations in the state. So all of the South Dakota congregations, or the ELCA congregations, are our owners, and that's kind of unique in that they don't have to feel allegiance to just one camp. They can kind of say, yeah, you know, Outlaw's our camp, or Joy Ranch is our camp, or Nisadak, or Klein. It also allows us to have a strong relationship with our Synod staff. Bishop Zelmer and Susan Marone and Bill Pesh and all the Synod staff have really been supporters of what outdoor ministry is and what it's meant historically for South Dakota. And we could not do what we do without that partnership from Synod and from our congregations. But maybe to get at the heart of that question of outdoor ministry in general beyond just the state of South Dakota, I think the first answer, and there are many, is that one thing that camps really offer people is time away. About 2 or 3 years ago, I sent out a survey to all of the pastors and youth directors in the state of South Dakota as we were trying to learn more and discern what their needs were. So I asked them, what's the one thing the people in the congregations you serve need more than anything else? And I was a little astounded that the answer that came back in some various forms, but roughly at 80% was time.
Yeah.
What the people in our congregations need is time. Time to discover who God is calling them to be as individuals and as families. Time to just sit around a table together and have a meal where everybody is in one place at one time. And I've thought about that a lot. And when you read Scripture, you see Jesus often going off by himself to pray or up a mountain. And from my vantage point here in South Dakota, I like to think of that as, you know, Jesus was taking time to go to camp. He was intentionally taking that time away to be renewed and to be empowered for all of the different things that he was being called to do.
Awesome. I love
It's
that.
important for all of us. I think we all need that.
Yeah, that's really great. As you alluded to a bit earlier, your congregations own your camps. Wondering if you can talk a little bit about how you partner with those congregations, why it's important, and what does success look like? The keys to successful partnerships.
Ha! Boy, that's a large question, Danica. What does success look like? One, it's contextual. It's contextual and it's local. Historic with our congregations in South Dakota, and we've been camp here since 1942, so we have a rich history of that. We do those programs that many places first think of. You know, we have a strong confirmation camp program where youth leaders and pastors come to camp and get to experience and be the teachers on our site. Mm-hmm. We also do day camp programs where camp comes to the congregation, and that's been surprisingly our most consistent program for 25 plus years. We are finding a real consistent need for that. And then we also do, of course, you know, many service ministries, tripping. We have people come out and like I said, spend time especially on the reservations of South Dakota and doing that leadership development. Mm-hmm. But times are changing, and things that we're finding today aren't necessarily exactly as they were 10 or even 5 years ago. As I shared with our constituency at the Synod Assembly a couple of years ago, in church as well as in camps, I think we're finding that the ground is shifting beneath our feet, and it's calling us to raise that question: what does it mean to be church today? What does it mean to be camp today? I share this because it started out as not necessarily a success, but it kind of turned out to be that, and then maybe this is a little bit of what success looks like in South Dakota. Mara and I and some of the camp directors here this past April were looking at our registration to see where we were at for summer and to see if we were going to be full and if we needed staff or all of those kinds of things. And all of a sudden we went, holy moly, these registration numbers seem a bit low from where we would like them to be. And so we did some brainstorming, and we visited with some local folks, and we ended up kind of flinging the doors wide open, if you will, and we intentionally searched out partnerships with different agencies and entities that we might not have if we were just left to our normal devices. And then the end result was we ended up partnering with our local homeless feeding ministry, the Banquet, located here in Sioux Falls. We ended up partnering with a center for women and families who are in distress, the St. Francis House, and several other organizations like this. And we just invited them, and we said, come to camp, and we ended up then partnering with our congregations who also kind of got on board or got with us, if you will. And our congregations ended up providing transportation to and from camp. Some provided hygiene kits. Some provided sleeping bags and swimsuits as well as scholarship dollars so that these things could happen. And at the end of the summer, we found that we had served more people in 2014 than we had in the last 10 years. And it was certainly different in 2014 than it was 10 years before. Mm-hmm. But it was a really powerful thing in the camp and congregation. We're able to do things together to introduce people to a life of faith in Christ and to ask together, what does it mean to be church and camp? Another piece that's related to that is congregational leadership retreats. So often we think of camp as being something that happens in June, July, and August, but the reality is camps in South Dakota, and I think I can speak for camps across the country, of which there are over 140 Lutheran camps across the country. If you've not been to the Lutheran Outdoor Ministry or LOM website to check it out, I encourage you to do that. But what I think is happening, especially for us, is we serve more people during the retreat season than we do in the summer. Again, it takes different shapes and forms, but it's just as powerful ministry, people coming out and having these Christ-centered encounters.
Cool. I'm wondering...
I'm a preacher. I talk a lot. Give me.
No, I love it. I'm wondering, is this picture that I just put up on the screen, is this something that you were talking about, the outreach?
No, I'm going to let Mara answer this. This is a really neat story. It's a young congregation here out of Sioux Falls that we've had a developing relationship with the last several years?
So this is a picture of some of the youth that we have from Pueblo de Dios, which is a Mission Start congregation, with their pastor, Jeanette Clark, who's
awesome, by the way.
Wonderful, who some of you may know. But they really have done amazing things as far as just really providing opportunities for the young people within their congregation. When Jeanette started in, I think it was about 3 years ago, we talked about, well, what can we do to get these young people to camp? And Jeanette had some major hurdles to get over as far as how to connect with parents and how to talk with people about what this camp thing is. And she really went above and beyond the call of duty, which is really what I think our hope is for what we can provide as a connection for congregations. It's really ways to connect with people and knowing that it's not going to be easy, it's going to be difficult, but it's going to be well worth the time and the effort to go out and to knock on doors and to have to go beyond any sort of barriers like language barriers or financial barriers or any of those barriers that you have, because this experience is an experience that's important, and we need to break down all of those barriers to make sure that it happens. And so year after year they have this great group of young people that have gone up to camp, and they've experienced something that changes their lives, and they are able to keep on doing it because of wonderful congregational support, like Layne mentioned before, making sure that there are beach towels, making sure there are toiletries, making sure that everyone has everything that they need, wonderful people within the congregations that are providing campership support, but then most importantly having that one person, that one key adult, and it doesn't have to be a pastor, it just needs to be someone within the congregation who's willing to take that extra step to go out to say, I see in you opportunity for leadership, I see in you the possibility to get some time away to really become who God wants you to be, and so I invite you to come along for this adventure. And so Pueblo de Dios has taken, I think, more kids to camp than a number of our larger congregations in this state because of that intentionality and that opportunity for really creating a positive experience for young people.
It starts out slow. We did day camp at this congregation for several years to begin to develop trust with them before their families would say, yeah, I'm going to send my kid off to this distant place called camp. But it began with the work of Pastor Jeanette, kind of knocking on their doors and saying, hey, this is something that can be transformative for your family. That's how it happens. But, you know, ministry is like that. Somebody makes an introduction. Trust becomes developed. And pretty soon you laugh and play and experience life together. And next thing you know, you're discovering Jesus. And he was around you all the time, but somehow your eyes are opened.
Cool. I think this plays a little bit into that, but there's probably most of our audience is youth workers or pastors who are in congregations, and I'm wondering if you as camp staff could enlighten us on what's most helpful from us to serve and make those partnerships better, that we can, the way that we can be better partners.
Sure. Hey, I got a short answer to that, and that's bring them to camp. And I know that sounds a little maybe trite and self-serving, but having been in a congregational setting myself, I mean, I think that's it. It comes down to inviting and then going with and experiencing camp with them. And it doesn't just help the camps, it helps the congregations. I recall when I was the associate pastor out in Rapid City, we would take kids out to Klein Ranch. And what I found, somewhat accidentally and then intentionally, was that the kids that I took to camp in the summer and spent time with, riding horse and going on hikes and acting goofy around the supper table, were those same kids who then hung around and became the leaders in my congregation the other 51 weeks of the year.
Yeah.
And after I noticed that happening, I kind of got wise to that. And so I would invite any youth leaders and youth pastors to kind of target those kids who you think have some leadership abilities and make sure they get to camp in the summer, and then make sure you're with them. And then once they come back and when school starts in the fall, because we all know they often disappear from congregations in the summer, bring up that camp experience and invite them to become the leaders of your congregation, and they will connect with their friends, and next thing you know, it just becomes so much stronger. But it all starts with that shared experience of being church together, whether that was off at camp around a campfire, or now back in wherever it is that they live.
Great. How important is it for you as camp staff to have those of us who are with our kids the other 51 weeks of the year, like you said, a part of that 1 week? I mean, I think sometimes that gets underestimated.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's huge. I look at that from my vantage point as my role here with Lutherans Outdoors, but then also from the eyes of a parish pastor. And camps exist to facilitate the work of the church and a little bit more work of ministry as the people like you mentioned who are doing this all year long. And we certainly try in South Dakota to help people be a part of that camp. We also need to be reminded of, we need to find all the ways that we can to get these pastors and youth leaders involved with the activities that are going on. Sometimes it's nice, I know this too, to be able to have a week at camp and kind of let down your guard and get away from responsibility. But even showing up at meals, and sitting next to them at campfire, and maybe going for a horseback ride or a swim with them makes all the difference in the world. Because as you're all well aware, the gospel unfolds to us often in those teachable moments of when you're walking down a trail with somebody and all of a sudden they notice something, and how cool is it if you're the one to be there with them to discover that, and you always have that together. The rest of the year and on down the road, you have that together. Some of the coolest weddings I've had a chance to preside at were kids who were not only in my youth group years ago, but kids who I was at camp with.
And Layne and I actually go to camp to spend time with advisors, pastors, and congregational leaders as well, because
Mara's the queen of advisors. She's just so excellent with them. She has these wonderful gift bags and stuff she gives them, and she won't even give. If there's leftovers, then I get to go home with them.
Right. So it's kind of like we think it's so important that adults go to camp with the kids, and we also think it's so important for us to go to camp with the other adults to just really know what their experience is like, and to be able to hear what they have to say about the experience, to open those lines of communication, because that's the other really big thing with our congregational partnerships, is really knowing, like what Layne talked about earlier, what it is that the families in the congregations need. And sometimes it's easier to make those connections when you are away from your setting, like for any of us in our leadership positions to be away, to be able to have some of that time to just talk about what people really need and where ministry is going and how we can best serve the people that come to camp, but then also how we can serve one another when we're back home and how we can expand what we do.
And we can learn from them as well, because more often than not these days our pastors and youth leaders have camp backgrounds themselves, like yourself, Danica. These are people who come with a wealth of information and can help us make our programs better. So we always want to be open to that.
Awesome. I want to invite people to join the conversation, and we have a couple of people who are doing so we'll jump into those questions. So let's just do that right now. Jay has written, it's maybe not a question, but an observation. As a youth director in northern Minnesota, he spends 4 weeks during the summer at camp with his youth. And whenever he's there, he's always busy doing everything, helping serve food, playing games, doing skits with the counselors, and has formed great relationships with some of those counselors because of how involved he gets. he's so excited to have the option to participate and that the youth get to see him in a different light. I think that's really important. As one of the reasons I love going to camp is because I don't have the pressures of being in charge and making sure everybody, I don't have to be the head counter or the time filler or any of those things. I just get to be at camp with kids and to be silly and to have fun. I think that's super important, Jay. Thanks for that that observation, because I think it's really true that it's important for our kids to see us not being the doer always, but to play. And
I like to say when kids come to camp, they kind of come without baggage, because all of those things that are a part of who they are, the other people don't know that, and so they get to discover that. And I think there's also a little bit of that freedom in the people who bring them there. They get to be this other Danica that their kids might not have seen in a congregational setting.
Another observation, church has changed from something people automatically do to one of the many options, and camp is the same. It used to be assumed that all kids went to camp, but they've stopped signing up. Elizabeth says it's crucial to invite, as we can see from what Pastor Jeanette is doing. So a celebration of what she's doing and a lesson to the rest of us who are also in congregations that the invite is so important. And crucial to camping ministry. Oh, did we lose you?
I was just going to add, Danica.
Yeah.
Yes, we have Susan Moreau, who's on Synod staff here now, used to serve in a congregational setting as a youth director. And when she was getting ready to go to camp, she would call every parent of the people in the middle school and say, it's important for you to get your kids to camp. And if you are having things that are stopping you, we'll help you find a way, especially if it's money or something like that. And that had a huge impact on not only their camp attendance, but then the vitality of the youth program at her congregation for years. But it's because she took the initiative to do that invite with each and every family, saying, I believe in this, it's something that will be important for your family, and we need to find a way to make it happen.
And that congregation is still to this day making those same calls and bringing a ton of kids to camp.
Awesome. That's great. Bethany has been so patiently waiting. Thanks, Bethany. She is wondering if we'll give a shout out to Journeys for Youth page, which is a place where people can find youth trips and youth and Lutheran camps around the country. So yes, Bethany, here's your shout out, journeysforyouth.com. And I hope that it's self-explanatory when you jump there that those things are easily found.
And that's actually found under the LOM network.
Oh, great.
Website that's on there as well, so you can get there if you happen to click on that link too through the Lutheran Outdoor Ministry page.
There we go. Network can happen right here. I love it.
Yep.
Well, we are so grateful that you could join us today, Layne and Mara. Thanks for your passion around camping ministry and youth ministry and all of those kinds of things. And we're glad to have your ear and your perspective from the other side. I have one more question coming in, and then
well, we're honored.
Great. Oh, did we? I think there's a little gap in our communication. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. One more question, and then we'll wrap up for the day. But Jay is wondering, how do we keep the enthusiasm that kids have from camp going the other 51 weeks of the year? Camp feels like it's the kindling in the bonfire of kids' faith. It starts the fire blazing, but when they come home, it feels like they lose the fire after a couple of weeks. how do you feel we can keep that fire going other than asking them to be leaders?
Well, camp is relational ministry, and one of the things that happens at camp is that those relationships get deepened when you kind of go off together. One thing that I found is if you find then ways to keep that relationship growing once you get home, to be where the kids are at, you know. And this is nothing new to the audience here, but you know, show up where they're at their basketball games, to show up those other places, and that helps keep that connect between camp and congregation and, you know, the rest of their daily life, which certainly takes up far more of their time. Mm-hmm. And I know when I was serving as a parish pastor, it was so fun just to kind of go and be a spectator, if you will, at some of these activities that these young people were a part of, who I got to know at camp or maybe in a church setting, and to see who they were when they were out and about at school and all those things. Mm-hmm. And to take the time to say, hi, how you doing? I noticed this or I noticed that. And it's all a part of that building relationship, and it keeps that growing, whether that happens at summer or whether it happens somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
I would say, too, providing opportunities for the older adults in your congregation to ask the questions, to hear the stories, to provide the youth the opportunity to share their enthusiasm about their experience. When they see them wearing a camp shirt, asking about what that camp experience was like and sharing in those common experiences, because often those older people in the congregation have had that camp experience, and it opens a door to a similar relational opportunity to have.
Maybe even have like one day a month where everybody wears their camp shirt to church, or on a Sunday or a Wednesday, and maybe you find that favorite activity that they did and you use that as an opening for what you do in your regular meetings.
Great. That's
It's cool. Camps have been around long enough now where people who are in their 70s had powerful youth experiences when they were younger, and they love to talk about it. And
yeah.
so if you can have older generations talk to younger generations about camp, they find that common connector that even though they're separated by years, they're connected through that common experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are great suggestions. Well, I'm afraid we've come to the end of our time. So thanks again for being with us. It goes so quickly, doesn't it?
It's just like super fast.
Well, we hope that we'll be seeing Mara at the extravaganza. And Layne, you're obviously welcome also. This year's
thank you.
This year's theme is story. We'll be gathering in Detroit for the extravaganza. The intensive care courses are held on January 29th and 30th, and the main event takes place from the 30th to the 2nd. So for more information, or if you still need to register, head over to elcaymnet.org/E2015. We hope that you'll join us for more conversations like this and for further networking opportunities. And we hope this is our last 3TC of 2014. Oh my gosh, I don't know where 13 came from. And we're grateful that you join us each month to chat about important things that involve our life of ministry. So thanks for making this possible. We'll see you next year. Merry Christmas, everyone.